Hello, it's wonderful to be here with you. I'm Tamrin, and I can't wait to share with you all the secrets that I've learned about how to launch an information product, and particularly to make it as painless and as easy as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump straight in. We've got a short session, but it is jam-packed with information. So make sure that you've got yourself a notepad and a pen. I'm going to share my screen with you here and hop straight in. So your first tip, if you don't already do this, is I use Google Suite. So these are some live slides. And what I'm going to do is hop in and share with you how it is that I work less and earn more by packaging my existing knowledge to sell online, and how you can do the same too. But I want to really kick off with opening the conversation of why you should bother with an information product business in the first place. Well, as a business model, it's a fantastic business model. If you're in a service-based business currently where you're trading away time for money, or even a hard product business where you're selling hard products, both of those require an amount of effort that is eliminated once you manage to master the information product business. Because how an information product business works, as I'm sure is quite obvious to you, it's why it's appealing to you, is that you make it once, or quite frankly 2 or 3 times, and once you've landed on your final product, you can sell it and sell it and sell it and sell it and sell it again. And the more number of people that buy it completely does not affect at all the cost of what it has to host it or what it was to make it. And that in and of itself is a fantastic business model to just get paid and paid and paid and paid and paid and paid again. There are a lot of skills involved in pulling that off, but I don't want that to intimidate us. I got intimidated when I first started my journey. The way I went about it is the total opposite that I currently recommend to anybody who asks me for mentoring around starting their own information product business. And that's because I thought I needed to be perfect, and I needed to know exactly what my polished product was going to look like before I started. And that tripped me up and let me took probably an extra 2 years before I got my first profitable information product business then was necessary, and a whole graveyard of unsuccessful courses, only unsuccessful in that they never actually got launched. Not because there was anything wrong with the idea or anything wrong with the potential product. And that's the core, the kernel of this short training for you today, is to help you avoid that. I am going to take you through from beginning to end the process of creating an information product, one that I launched this year and has had over $500,000 worth of sales in Rand. That's about a $20,000, $30,000, depending on where you are in the world, US dollar mark, having just created something small and tested it in the exact same formula that I'm going to show you now. So in this session, we're going to cover 3 things. The first is the number one mistake to avoid in an online information product business, and I've just started hinting at it to you now. Number 2 is just a 3-step process to test to know if your product will sell. And then number 3 is a 14-day first launch formula, just what I recommend you do over literally just a 2-week period to launch your very first information product. Now, I know that it's going to feel hard to believe that it can be that simple. I didn't say easy, but simple. But it is. And when I say it's not easy, it's not that any of the tech has to be difficult. It's not that anything to do with creating a course has to be difficult. What is actually difficult is overcoming our need for perfection. So that jumps us straight into the number one mistake to avoid. If you can just pause and truly appreciate what I'm going to tell you, it is going to save you a world of pain. And that is that you don't have to have the perfect picture plan of what your information product is going to be. Maybe you're watching people up on your Facebook newsfeed making $1 million launches, making tens and thousands of dollars in information products. Maybe you've bought some information products and it's this enormous, perfect, smooth, slick, glossy membership site with 200 videos and lighting and lipstick and backdrop, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm just never going to get there. It just seems like too huge a mountain to climb. I will never be able to make this perfect thing, because you're viewing somebody's year 5 highlights reel and you're contrasting it with your behind the scenes beginner. And that That mountain, even though it's just a mental one, in and of itself, will stop you from getting started. That's the number one mistake people make in an information product business. They don't get started. And the reason they don't get started, the reason you haven't got started, you right now, the person sitting here listening to me, you, is because you think you have to be perfect. You think you have to know exactly what your product's going to look like. You think it has to be exactly as beautiful as the Amy Porterfield or the Jeff Walker or whichever amazing information product you've got your hands on. And it's just not true. So here's a diagram here of an approach borrowed from software, where people used to develop software in this fashion. They used to go off into a room with all the people involved, the software developers, the project managers, the person who was going to use the software, the person who was going to pay, and they all sat together and they talked about what this piece of software needed to look like. Then the developers went off and locked themselves in a room for 6 months to a year. They developed the piece of software. And when they finally finished, they came back and they interacted with the person who was going to use the software. And as the person started using it, they said, oh, you know what, actually, we kind of changed the way that we worked, and this button feels kind of a bit awkward, and we don't do that anymore. Could you go back and make a change? And this used to be an enormous waste of time and money, because they were developing the product in isolation, then giving it to the user, then finding out the user wanted something different. So in response to that, the way software gets developed today has changed to avoid this thing you see here of what is called the waterfall effect, where you define it, then you build it, then you release it, and your value to the customer is actually low, and the risk that you're not delivering what they need is high if you go off and develop your product in isolation. So in response to that, in the software development world, they started using an approach called the agile approach, where what they do now is they develop it in collaboration with the user. And it's that exact approach that I want to recommend we use for developing a product, an information product. But in fact, this approach can be used for developing or making anything. So instead of defining it, developing it, releasing it in its entirety of how you think it needs to be for the user, you actually include the user in the experience. So what you do is you define a minimum number of features, what's called a minimum viable product in the software development world. You let the user interact with it, and then based on what the users say, you reiterate and you build a slightly more advanced version, and based on what the users say, you build another version, and over time you develop the product that exactly the user needs. That's called an agile approach to developing, and it's the approach I want you to take with your first information product. It is going to save you a world of pain. Now, it feels uncomfortable to live in this space because it almost feels counterintuitive. You think that in the online world you've got to be polished and perfect, but actually you don't. All that an information product business allows you is the ability to augment what you have to offer, your knowledge, to the world using technology and tools, but not that you have to have a TV quality, Netflix level production. You don't. You can just teach people what you know using tools like webinars and Facebook groups and all of the things that are involved in an online business. If you take what I've just said now, put it in your back pocket and truly appreciate it, it is going to allow you to literally launch a product, if you choose, within 14 days. So don't take the waterfall approach. Be agile. So here's how you start. You're thinking, okay, well, that sounds great. Well, how do I start? Here is how you start. There's first a three-step process, really. And that three-step process gets broken down into what you can unfold over 14 days. But let's start with the overall thing that you're going to do. You're going to involve the community. Step one. You're going to test in your existing community. Now, you might say to me, well, Tamarin, I don't have an online business. Who? What community are you talking about? You have a community right now. You have an existing network. If you've got a current business, maybe you've got an email list of your current customers. Maybe you have a Facebook page. Maybe you have an Instagram account. If you don't, you've got a personal network. You've got a Facebook page, I'm sure, a profile with friends on it. You've got people in your immediate vicinity who you interact with regularly. That is your community, and that is your starting place. It sounds too simple, but it isn't. It's just a case of actually implementing it. The missing piece in any information product business, selling your knowledge, is getting started and taking action. So you test in your existing community. And in a moment, I'm going to take you through from the beginning to end exactly how I did that when I walk you through the third element of this training, which is how to do it over 14 days. You test in the community, you pay attention to what the community says, and you do that by asking. The second thing is, based on what you hear people say to you when you ask them in your community, you invite them to join a pilot group. Now, some of you might be surprised that I said step one is you ask people what they want, and step two is you invite them for an opportunity to give them what they want. It's not what most people think, which is then you go off and make it. That's actually not the recommendation. That's not the agile way. The agile way is to make it in collaboration with your students. And this is where a lot of people take a very different path than what I'm recommending. And it's a path I took a couple of times the first time I made an information product. My first three, certainly, information products I made in completion with perfect slides and videos and editing and lighting before I even tried to give it to somebody. And I am telling you, that is one way to make sure you don't ever get off the ground. It's too long a journey, it's too much in isolation, and it's unlikely to be successful. Whereas if you get a group of people and you make your information product with them in real time, whether it's a once-off product that takes place in the form of a short workshop, so maybe you invite them to a 2-hour workshop and you deliver that workshop in a Facebook group or on a webinar using a piece of software like Webinar Jam, or a series of calls that happens over 5 weeks. It's important to realize that that exercise is the creation of your information product. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying make the information product in collaboration with your students. Ask them between calls what they need more of. Listen to them and adjust. And then those recordings actually become the thing that you sell. So that's the step 3. You run a pilot in collaboration, and that becomes your product. My very first information product this year was a series of recordings that took place live, and then I packaged those recordings into a membership site and sold them, and that product is still for sale. And it can be as simple as that. So let's spend the rest of the call now jumping into what this 3-step process looks like over a 14-day period, and I'll share my screen on how exactly I did that on Facebook. Sound good? Great. So here is the 14-day first launch formula. Day 1 to 3, ask your audience what problem they're having as it pertains to what you know you can share with them, the knowledge that you have, whatever it is your business does. Ask them what is stopping them from engaging with you, using your product. Whatever it is that you have to offer, ask them why it is that they're not doing that. And that can be the first 3 days where you ask and you pay attention to what they say. The next 3 days is based on what you've learned, put together some kind of offer for that pilot group and some basic tech. You don't have to have a fancy landing page. You can do all of this on Facebook. It can be your Facebook page and a Facebook group. And perhaps if you want some kind of platform like Zoom or Webinar Jam where you actually deliver the information, the training. Then day 9 to 12, invite them to join that training, and then day 13 to 14, make the offer. If it's that is the overarching thing. So let me then just talk you through all of the steps by sharing what I actually did. So step 1 is to ask the community what's holding them back. I'm going to share with you my Facebook page. Give me a moment. There it is. So in January of this year, I launched an information product about how to start an Airbnb business. I've got various different information products. In general, I teach people how to start low input businesses. And at the end of this call, I'll give you a link to my Facebook group where you can hear more about that. But this was in January. You can see the date. I had a hunch that people were interested in learning about how to start a low input Airbnb business because I've always had low input Airbnb businesses, and people will ask me all the time how I do it. So what I did is my own step one of the 3-step process is I asked the question to my community. I put it on my business page, I put it on my personal Facebook page, and I also sent it out via email saying, hey, what's the number one thing holding you back from starting your own Airbnb side hustle? And then I paid attention to the answers. And they varied, but there were themes. There was repeating themes that people answered me, and they ended up being because they think they need to have another property. So, oh, I don't have another property, so how can I start Airbnb? They thought that it was really time intensive, and they thought that they had to kind of put up with sort of demanding strange people. And when I realized that those were the 3 main things that were holding people back, I could use that information to educate them and to craft an offer. So what I did was I put together 3 videos dispelling those myths. So the first video, this should be right above here, was I don't have a second property, so I can't get on the Airbnb train. And I just talked about why that's not true. Then my next video I did was dispelling the myth that you have to have strangers in your house. And then my next video was about it being super, super time intensive. So based on what people told me was holding them back, I put together 3 very simple, very short, they're like 1 minute pieces of content dispelling those myths, because I wanted to know if those myths, if the obstacle holding people back from starting were removed, would they be interested in starting their own Airbnb product? Because if they were, then I could put an information product together to help them. So those 3 pieces of content were me testing if those obstacles they've told me are removed. Is there a need for what it is that I can teach them? And I ran a few very short ads. These were posts that I boosted on Facebook, and you could see they got a lot of engagement. So for me, that told me people are interested in this. So based on that, so you see I've tested now. If we talk about the agile approach, I've tested if people are interested. If I did this and nobody answered, I might have done a second round where I changed the way that I presented the information. And if I presented the information 2 or 3 different times on Facebook and nobody seemed interested, for me, I would have proven that there isn't an appetite for this. And I would perhaps have picked a different topic or a different angle of the same topic, and I would have started again. I wouldn't have just carried on if I didn't get this level of engagement. So the next thing I did was, okay, what I'm going to do now, I can see that if the obstacles are removed, people are interested in Airbnb. I'm going to put together an offer of a very, very short Airbnb starter kit program. And the way that I'm going to make that offer is going to be off of a webinar. So I'm going to offer a webinar teaching why these 3 myths in more detail are not true. And at the end, I'm going to ask people to join Airbnb Starter Kit. And since I was using a webinar format, I used Webinar Jam, and a Webinar Jam allows you the page where people can sign up. So this isn't active anymore. That's why the count is gone. But Webinar Jam, this page is hosted on Webinar Jam. You don't have to go into anything technical. Webinar Jam is a paid subscription, but it's a well worthwhile one. I'm even recording any training I do on Webinar Jam. So I put together how to make an extra 10,000 Rand a month, extra $1,000 a month, and people registered. On that training, I taught them why those 3 things are not true. And at the end, I asked them if they'd like to join Airbnb Starter Kit. And when they joined Airbnb Starter Kit on Facebook, I delivered some basic modules. So you can see that Facebook groups have a social group has an ability to have units, and you can host a course on the Facebook group. So you can see how low tech it is. This ran in a 1-hour session over 4 weeks, where I took an initial pilot group. There was about 20 people who joined initially through my training. And after that, I took those videos and I decided, okay, I'm going to invest in a paid membership site now. I used ClickFunnels at the time. And every other person who joined, you can see there's over 100 people in this group, they bought access to those call recordings. And that is as simple as an information product needs to be. It doesn't need to be more complex than that. What is actually difficult is taking the action to do it. So if I come back to our 14-day process here and I talk you through it in a little bit more detail now that you've seen that, it will have a little bit more context for you. So day one, what you need to do is test with your community, your existing community, what's holding them back in the area that you are successful, the area that you have knowledge. Step two, pay close attention to their responses. If needs be, pose the question again in a different way. But what they say is what you have to use to take the lead. You have to suspend your own assumptions about what you think they need to know, and you have to pay attention to what is actually coming out of their mouth. That is a crucial ingredient in the Agile approach. Step three, compile all of their resistance points that they tell you in the messages and demonstrate, think about how you can communicate that those are myths. It could be some Facebook Lives like you saw in my example where I just made 3 live videos around why the 3 main objection points are not true. And then monitor how people interact with that. Based on that, if you see that that message is resonating, you've got something that's useful for people, people are interacting, then on day 4, you can compile a minimum viable product offer to solve their challenge. So in my version I just took you through, the minimum viable product offer was a starter kit course, which was 4 calls that took place live over 4 weeks. That was my minimum viable offer. I wanted to test if people would buy that, and then I wanted to make it. And only then would I go around a second time and formalize that into a course. That's when I just had it hosted on Facebook, and the calls took place live. Once I've got my offer of what it is I'm actually going to sell, then I can on day 5 compile my messaging based on their stuck points. And you can give yourself 2 days for that. So what is your messaging? Think about what the pain points are that you're solving for the people, and use that language. I know that this is how your reality might be, but your reality could be like this. Once you've got your basic messaging, day 7 and day 8 is your basic tech in order to test. I really love the small video on Facebook to test, webinar to educate and make offer, Facebook group to deliver content. That is the most basic tech you need in order to test an idea. And you can give yourself 2 days to do that, 7 and 8. Once you've got your basic tech in place, like I said, you can make a Facebook group to deliver the content in. You don't need a membership site just yet, and you can use something like Webinar Jam or Zoom, a Zoom call to let people sign up. Then you've got day 9, 10, and 11 to share with your network and join. The same people who answered that original post, go back and say, hey, I've actually put together something based on what you've told me. Come and watch. If you've got an email list, email it out to your list and invite people to join. Then on day 13, you can run that webinar training, or you can run that live thing where you make the offer for people to join. And then on day 14, if it's a small workshop that you've invited people to do, if it's just a 1-hour workshop, deliver it, or if it takes place over a period of time, you can start it. And that is my recommendation for how to go about testing and launching an information product, and avoiding the very, very, very important minefield of trying to be perfect. It is going to save you a tremendous amount of pain and procrastination if you follow that formula. Remember a few key important things. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to test the idea and to collaborate with people who are the ones who need your solution, your product, and adjust according to what they say. Whether you extend that 14 days over to 30 days, it doesn't matter. I quite literally use a 2-week period to iterate and to test, and I've launched 3 products this year in the same way, but I just showed you the first one because it was simple to follow and I didn't want you to confuse your ideas. But you absolutely can, when you decide to focus on one corner of an elephant, begin to eat the elephant. It's simply when you think that it's the whole mountain you have to climb that you end up not even getting started in the first place. So my encouragement to you is to sit down, look at the notes that you've taken from this training now, and think about what is that one minimum viable product that you've got sitting inside of your brain right now that you could help solve somebody else's problem with, no matter what your area of expertise is. My information product I just showed you about using Airbnb to start side income, I never imagined that I would become the Airbnb queen, but I knew I had a set of knowledge and skills that other people could use to solve a problem of theirs, which was a little bit of side income using unused spaces. And you've got something inside you like that now. It may be the core base of knowledge of your business, and it may be something totally unrelated. So the call to action, as soon as we are finished now here in this training session, is sit down and say, what is it that people frequently ask me about? What base of knowledge am I consistently getting advice about? And what's the minimum viable product? What's the minimum amount of knowledge and information I can pass on to somebody to help them with that frequent question that I keep asking? And then circle back to day 1 of the 14-day formula and say, what is stopping people from doing this anyway? If I'm having success in it, what's stopping other people? And begin the process of asking them, putting together an offer, offering it to them, and testing it. And do that on repeat, and you will be amazed what can transpire if that's the approach that you take. I can't wait to hear about your success. You are welcome to hop onto my Facebook community. I'll just pop a link on the end there to let me know what success you have had with this method. There's my Facebook community there. It is all about designing a lifestyle of your dreams, designing a business to support your lifestyle, and all of the ways that you can build time freedom and location freedom and every other amazing kind of freedom into your life. And pop on there and let me know what it is that you've decided you're going to implement, and let us hold you accountable on there on your minimum viable product agile approach. I can't wait to hear about your success, and happy launching.